You on Facebook, Paul?
Yes.
I don't see it.
Welcome to the Health Detective Podcast with Roberto Parker. Join strength and conditioning expert Roberto Parker as he shares his over 35 years of experience in training athletes and helping people achieve their fitness goals. Now here's your moderator, Chris Whiting, with Coach Roberto.
All right. Welcome, everybody, once again. I am Chris Whiting. I'm your moderator for the Health Detective Podcast. Now, for those of you that have listened to this show a lot, you know we delve into nutrition frequently on this program. Anybody new to the show, we talk about exercise, we talk about activity, we talk about diet, nutrition, everything that encompasses your health. Well, tonight, we're going to dig a little bit more into diet and nutrition. And I believe, and Roberto, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're going to go deep into the carnivore lifestyle and talk about if vegetables are even really needed for us to survive.
Well, yeah, we are, but I'm gonna give some props out to the plant-based too. I'm gonna give some pros and cons to both sides here, but I don't want to tip my hat too early here, tip my hand, but I think some people will be amazed at some of the research that I've come up with. So, you know, I want to try to be as fair as I can to both sides, because I know there's people out there who are into the vegan lifestyle, the vegetarian lifestyle, and the carnivore lifestyle. And you know, just up front, I'll be honest with you, I'm a little bit more of a carnivore. I'll admit that. I'm not a complete carnivore, but that's more what I believe in for me personally. But as we've talked about much in the past, all of us are different biologically and physiologically. What's going to work best for you? I don't believe that any of us should be 100% herbivores or 100% carnivores.
Hey,
The truth lies in the middle. Yes, sir.
I'm going to interrupt you for a second. We're now on KCTK Radio at Facebook. I put this on the wrong page before, so if you want to share that with all your friends.
On what website now?
KCTK Radio on Facebook.
Okay, I already put it on my Facebook page.
All right, excellent. All right, thank you, folks.
Okay.
Back to you, Roberto.
All righty, man.
All right.
Here, Chris.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep. You're
Go ahead,
on,
bud.
buddy.
Okay.
So you were on a pretty good roll there about the differences physically, physiologically that lead to the different types of diets that may be best for us, saying that you lean more carnivore.
Yes. For me personally, yes.
Yeah.
Now, let me get right into this, Chris, because I'm going to get a little bit sciencey tonight and give a lot of facts and figures. And, you know, I don't want to get too deep because it's not very good radio to do that. I want some interaction between us. And I know I sent you some articles.
Yep.
Here's the thing about being a plant-based, based on how we evolved as human beings. Animals that eat primarily plants do not have canines. That's probably one of the biggest differences. Human beings have canines, correct?
You're talking teeth, not dogs, correct?
Yeah, right. Teeth.
Okay, gotcha.
Teeth in your head. Yes. A herbivore animal, typically, their intestinal lining, their small intestines and their large intestines are about 20 times the length of their body. I'm talking herbivores, all plant-eating animals.
Okay.
A carnivore is about 1.5 to 3 times the length.
Interesting.
Human beings they're somewhere in the middle. They're about 9 times the length.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we're kind of in the middle of human beings. Animals can digest fiber. Excuse me, not animals. Plant-eating animals can digest fiber. Ruminant animals like cows, sheep, goats, because they have multiple chambers in their stomach, and they're able to turn plants into bacteria. So they're able to digest fiber much more efficiently than carnivores and human beings. Human beings cannot digest fiber.
Mm-hmm.
We can poop it out, but we really don't digest it. You follow me?
Okay, so that's why. So it enters and leaves your alimentary tract basically in the same form.
Pretty much, yes.
Okay.
Whereas plant-eating animals can convert the bacteria and that fiber into, they can use it more efficiently for digestion and for cellular reasons. We don't do that as well.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, we don't do it at all. Okay, here's another one. Plant-based eating animals, when they chew, they masticate in a more rotational manner with their mouths.
Okay.
Okay. Now, also with animals that are plant-based have eyes on the side of their head, like a rabbit. You ever notice that?
I have noticed that. Yes.
Okay. Now, let's get into animals that are more flesh-eating animals.
Mm-hmm.
They have canines. Human beings have canines also. Lions and tigers, who are strictly carnivore, have multiple sets of canines. We have only one set of canines.
Mm-hmm.
Animals that eat primarily other flesh have eyes in the front of the head, not the side of the head.
Hey, that's where ours are.
Exactly. So you see the similarities
Yeah.
for both sides here. Okay. Human beings, when they chew, it's vertical mastication, not rotational, similar
Mm-hmm.
to a carnivore, to
Right.
all animals that eat meat. Okay. Here's another one. Animals that are mainly flesh-eating animals, they do not have cecums. Now, cecum is like your appendix, okay? That is what helps you to break down and to digest fiber. Human beings do not have that as well.
Now, did our appendixes perhaps used to be cecums at one point?
Yes, that is what I have read. Now, I'm not going to get into how we evolved as human beings. Some people believe in the evolutionary theory. Some people
Mhm.
believe in the creation theory. You know me and my faith, I lean more towards creation, but that's not the topic of tonight.
Gotcha.
But how do we evolve as human beings? Well, there are some theories, and I've been doing a lot of reading on this, that at one time human beings were more herbivore, omnivore, before we became Homo sapiens.
Aha.
Now, as the climate started to change, we entered the ice age. The climate started to change, correct?
Correct.
So you didn't have a lot of vegetation during the ice age. You had some, but only when the ground thawed out.
Mm-hmm.
And so as a result of that, human beings had to become more flesh-eating creatures.
Gotcha.
As a result of that, our brains started to enlarge, became larger, and the organs within our bodies became smaller.
So why is that? Is that energy distribution?
Yes, because because they became larger, needed more energy to function.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, the difference between an animal and a human being, let's use an elephant, for example. An elephant has a much larger brain than a human being. I think everybody probably knows that.
Mm-hmm.
But the difference is this. Most of the brain cells of the human being is located in the prefrontal cortex, the frontal part of the brain. With an elephant, most of the brain cells are located in the back of the brain, called the cerebellum.
Right.
That is why human beings can decipher, can make creative decisions. That is why we're pretty much above the animals, because
Mm-hmm.
most of our thinking is done with the prefrontal cortex, not the cerebellum.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I know I'm getting a little bit sciencey here. Okay, now here's another one. I'm going to go back to plants here for a little bit. Now, what are the bad parts of eating a plant? Plants, like animals, have a defense mechanism.
Uh-huh.
And those defense mechanisms are biochemical. And those are called lectins, oxalates, phytates, and enzyme inhibitors.
Wow.
Now, I know that's a mouthful. I'll repeat those again: lectins, oxalates, enzyme inhibitors, and phytic acid. Now, and plants were designed with that to basically defend themselves against predation, against predators, because animals run from their prey or fight their prey, whereas plants cannot do that. So the good Lord made plants with this ability to make you sick as a dog or kill you if you eat them. Okay. Now, here's a question for you. Name an animal that a human being cannot consume.
There's got to be something. I can't think of one. There's that fish that they do in Japan that if you don't prepare it right, you'll die from it.
But if it's prepared right, you can eat it.
Yes, correct.
Now, switch that around. There are several plants that you cannot eat.
True.
Why? Because they will kill you, because they are poisonous, because they'll make you sick as a dog and make you wish you were dead.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
There are plants that you cannot eat because of that. Now, plants, like I said, have a way of defending themselves against predation. Now, some of the research that I have been doing states that specifically. That is the reason that a strict carnivore, and I've seen you a lot of information, you read my videos, watch my videos by Dr. Sean Baker. He talks about this a lot, why we should not eat plants, which I don't 100% agree with, but I do believe that plants can be problematic for many people because of the way they're designed and the defense mechanisms that they have developed. They have evolved for millions and millions and millions of years. Think about it. Plants have been around for a long time. Now, I know what you're thinking. Well, there's certain animals that can eat plants. True. Their stomachs are designed for that.
Okay, so can I ask you a question? I had a
Yes.
vegetarian a few weeks ago say to me, Chris, she said, look at horses, look at gorillas. They eat plants and they're full of muscle. Why do we need to eat meat to get protein?
Okay, here's the reason why. Because as I said in the beginning of the podcast tonight, there are certain animals who have the ability to consume plants and convert those plants to protein for their bodies, for good bacteria for their bodies. A gorilla is one of those. I'm not up to date on a horse. I'll be honest with you. I didn't do a lot of studying on horses, but a gorilla is. Elephants don't eat other animal flesh. Elephants are very strong animals.
Yes.
Okay. Bears are omnivore. Bears can eat plants and other animals. In fact, you can eat people too. Okay. So yes, that person is right. But human beings are not horses and gorillas.
Right.
There is a difference between us. Horses are herbivores. They don't have canines. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll just leave that with you. Okay. Now, here's the thing about the lectins, oxalates, enzyme inhibitors, and phytic acid. I'm going to make it kind of fast here. They will disrupt the absorption of iron, magnesium, proteins, calcium. In addition to that, they also they produce a crystal-like formation or crystal-like type of substance that can get into your body and cause joint pain, muscular pain, arthritis, and those sort of things. Now, here's another one. Lectins. They settle down in your stomach, and there's a nerve in your small intestines called your vagus nerve that goes up and connects with your brain.
Or what?
Lectins, yes, the vagus nerve. Lectins have the ability to climb the vagus nerve and get into the brain, and they contribute heavily to Parkinson's disease.
Holy cow.
Okay, we're talking lectins from plants.
Are there specific plants that tend to have more lectins than others?
Yes. Here's, okay, the main things you have to watch out for are things like nuts.
Okay.
Nuts are plants, obviously. Let me just say this. 50% of our American diet, the way food is marketed and manufactured, is made of wheat, soy, corn, and some rice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, those are all plant-based, correct?
Correct.
Correct. Now, the problem with some of those is that they become synthesized, they become synthetic in the way they're produced by food manufacturers, which makes it even more problematic. But are we truly designed to consume those? And the lectins primarily are found in a lot of seeds. So when a flower produces, or any sort of plant produces seeds, and they drop the seeds to the ground, that's plant's ways of reproducing itself. And seeds are basically like nuts. Okay, so lectins are heavily involved in nuts. So when you're consuming a lot of raw nuts or raw seeds, that's when your body can become infected, let's say toxic, with lectins.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's the thing. With nuts and even a lot of things like bread, you probably heard about this before. You should soak your seeds and your nuts and your grains. And this is what they did in the old days, back in the days when the Bible was written, back in the biblical times, back in ancient history. They would soak everything. They would ferment things. Why would they ferment things? Because it would kill a lot of the bad toxins in the plant seeds.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so by doing that, you can eliminate some of those things we just talked about, the lectins, the isolates, the enzyme inhibitors. You won't get all of it. In fact, the way to do that is soak them for about 4 hours in vinegar and lemon juice.
Oh,
empty the water, soak them for another 4 hours. So it takes time to do this. They would, back in the old days, they would ferment everything. They would ferment meats, they would ferment the vegetables, fruits, nuts, everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it should be the same way even with bread. So, bread is made out of plants. And the best type of bread, if you want to really reduce some of those toxic potentials, is soak everything in some sort of solution like vinegar or lemon juice or something like that. So that's one way. But my suggestion is just don't eat a lot of it. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, there are some people who are going to be more susceptible to consuming nuts and breads and rice and corn. Those are all plant-based types of foods. You have to do an experiment on yourself out there, everybody who's listening, because if you continue to consume most of that stuff, the majority of that in your diet, especially as you get older, you will develop leaky gut, some autoimmune disorders, some joint issues, and not to mention a lot of allergies, like people sneezing and coughing all the time. So that's mainly from food that you eat. Now, I want to talk real fast about the studies that I read. Okay, I'm going to read these off to you real quick here.
Sure,
I'm going to move fast. What's that?
It's your show. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, one study is, let's see. Let me find it here. Wrong page. Okay, here we go. The Minnesota Coronary Experiment. There's one study. Here's another one called the Corn Oil in the Study of Ischemic Heart Disease.
Mm-hmm.
That's another one. One more I'll give you. The Sydney Diet Heart Study. Now, what they did in these 3 studies is this. Some of the studies had 400 participants, 400 subjects. Some studies had 300, some had 200. One study went for 8 years. Another study went for 5 years. Another study went for 2 years. And what they did is this. They had two treatments. One group of people ate nothing but saturated fats, such as bacon, eggs, and meat.
Yum.
That's what they ate.
Yum.
I could do that. This is a study for anywhere from 2 to 8 years. Now, that was called the control group. The second group, which was the experimental group, they ate mainly low saturated fats, a lot of seed oils, vegetable oils, and mainly plant-based type of eating.
Mm-hmm.
As a result, like I said, these studies went for multiple years now. Remember a few shows ago, we talked about causation versus association.
Right.
Remember we talked about this. when you do this type of a study, a long range study for 8 years, that's, in my opinion, pretty good causation. Now, here's what they found. The groups that consumed high saturated fats, bacon and eggs and pork and that kind of thing, they had the lowest mortality rates. They had the least incidence of heart diseases.
Wow.
Okay. The other groups had higher mortality rates, had more arthritis, had more types of metabolic disorders than the group who ate mainly saturated fats.
Mhm.
Okay. So what that tells me is, we need to reevaluate the type of foods, such as the Impossible burgers and meat that we see in stores, which is, by the way, industrialized.
Mhm.
And maybe we need to take a closer look at saturated fats, because that's what our grandparents ate, and that's what our great grandparents ate, and that's what our great 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 grandparents mainly consumed.
Mhm. Well, and I
And
know,
those
go ahead.
people, they weren't dying of things that we have today nearly as often. Go ahead, Chris. I'm sorry.
So I know you've talked in the past about different cultures like the Inuits, the Eskimos, that live in climates that aren't conducive to growing plants, so they eat
Yep.
primarily meat. Do you know, and I'm kind of putting you on the spot, but do you know if there's been studies done with them of incidents of heart disease and
Yes.
Parkinson's and
Yes. Dr. Weston Price was a dentist who went around and he studied multiple cultures, some in cold climates, some in very, very warm climates. He went as far as to the North Pole, far north, and he also went to the equatorial portion of the world. And what he found was that people around the equator, yeah, they were more plant eating type of people, but they also consumed wild animals too. Now, they just didn't eat all plants.
Mhm.
And they were very, very healthy people. Whereas people up in the North Pole area, the Eskimos, the Inuits, they were consuming primarily all meat. Why? Because you can't grow vegetation in the North Pole.
Yeah.
And so they were, until they started eating more industrialized food, in other words, some people call them white man's food, that's when they became more sickly, became more disease oriented, started getting fatter. So one more thing I want to talk about before I forget. You go
Yeah.
back about 12,000 years. That's when the Ice Age ended. And
Okay.
what entered our societies? It's called the Agricultural Revolution,
Oh,
where you
yes.
started having, yes, and that started around the Middle East somewhere over in that part of the world. That's when you started growing plants, wheat, corn, mainly a lot of wheat.
Mhm.
Guess what? The first people that they studied in terms of anthropology, the digs, were the Egyptians. The
Yeah, I dig.
Egyptians were some of the first people to start eating a lot of wheat. That was the first, from what I understand now, what I read, that was the first time in history people started becoming overweight and obese during the time that the Egyptians and the Middle Easterners started consuming wheat.
Hmm.
And now it's even worse because we have genetically modified wheat, genetically modified corn, genetically modified soy, genetically modified rice,
Yeah.
which is even more synthetic and more shitty for our bodies. Now, here's another thing. I'm full of information tonight, man.
You are. Yeah. You're on a roll, buddy. Go.
Hey,
Preach.
look, you've heard of Roundup, right? Roundup kills just about anything,
Yeah.
right? Roundup can kill practically dirt. But when you genetically modify crops, Roundup won't kill it.
Ew.
Think about that.
Yeah,
And
that's
that's
frightening.
what we're putting in our bodies from a lot of these food manufacturers. Things that are snacks, things that are fast foods, things you go in the aisle that are quick, bring it off the shelf, and shove it down your throat, quickie foods.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's made out of.
Mm-hmm.
Genetically modified corn, wheat, soy, and rice.
Mm-hmm.
So to wrap it up here, guys, okay, I know I've been kind of long-winded. Look, I'm not a doctor, okay? I'm not going to tell people out there to go strictly carnivore or strictly vegan or vegetarian, but I'm just telling you that if things like nuts and eating a lot of vegetables and fruits are not sitting well with you, if you're not sleeping well, if your mood is off, if your energy is off, if you're having food cravings, if your hunger is never right, something isn't right. If your bowel eliminations are not right, if you have really loose stools, okay, which a lot of people do, okay, we could probably do a show on that. I know it's kind of gross, but if you're having a lot of loose stools, something ain't right. Okay? It should be nice and solid coming out of the rear end back there, baby, not loose. Now, a lot of that is from eating, getting back, we talked about lectins, oxalates, enzyme inhibitors, because it's loosening up your bowels. It is causing leaky gut. Get back to a more animal-based type of eating. Now, it doesn't have to be animal flesh. It could be eggs. It could be cheese. It could be yogurt. It could be butter. Okay? Now, even with cheese, you got to be careful because some people have a problem with cheese even. And with milk. Milk is especially problematic. So you have to kind of play around with what you're eating and see how you feel. What type of bowel movements are you having? Is it affecting your sleep, mood, energy, food cravings, hunger? That's what I'm saying here. Okay?
Gotcha. And if somebody wanted to talk to you about their bowel movements or do some kind of test to see what type of food might be best for them, is that something you can help them with?
Yes, we'll talk more than just about your bowel movements, but we'll talk about the type of food you're eating. Once again, getting back to how does it make you feel? Are you having a hard time with your weight, taking excess body fat off? Are you having a hard time putting on muscle? Are you having a hard time with some of the hormonal balance that's going on with you for men and or women? And yeah, I believe that 80 to 90% of the problems we have with diseases are related to the foods we're eating and the combination of exercise and activity. I also believe that many diseases, 80% to 90% of many of the diseases we have in our society can be resolved with dietary supplements, not supplements, but foods and some supplements. It can be resolved with the way you're eating nutritionally. So it can be problematic because of food, and it can be resolved as a result of eating the right type of foods.
Wow.
So don't just jump on the vegan bandwagon or the vegetarian bandwagon because it's popular and you read about it, some movie stars doing it. I don't give a shit, okay? Now here's the other thing. Just don't jump on carnivore either because that may not work for you as well. You have to experiment, trial and error, what's going to work for you. Is it energizing you? Is it depleting you? Is it creating brain fog? Are you putting on muscle? Are you maintaining muscle like you should? Are you sleeping well at night? Are you having food cravings or you want to just eat the carpet off the floor? I mean, look, all those things are important. If you are experiencing negative things and you're still doing the vegan or carnivore type of eating, you need to change up a few things.
Gotcha. Hey, another quick question. So, obviously we talked about grains and a lot of the problems with that, especially the genetically modified, but are there any vegetables that you're like, these typically would be good for you to include? Like, I know you're primarily carnivore, but you do eat some vegetables.
Yes.
So like, what kinds do you steer?
Garlic,
Yum.
onions, carrots, and I'm not a real big carrot person, but carrots are less problematic. Artichokes.
Okay,
those. A lot of some of the fruits like blackberries and blueberries. Okay, the biggest, and I'll use myself as an example. I used to eat a lot of nuts. I mean, I would eat cashews, I would eat almonds, and I like the taste of them. I love the taste of them, but man, they just didn't sit well with me. I'll be honest with you. They were bloating me up. I just didn't feel right. I mean, what is wrong with me? I was trying to, get the balance of the proteins and that kind of thing, but it just didn't feel right. But since I've kind of switched more to more of a keto / carnivore way of eating, I'm a lot better. I'm less bloated. In fact, I'll never get bloated really. And I
Yeah.
just feel better. I just feel better. Now, some people might also ask, well, I can get just as much protein with plants as I can with animals. Wrong. You
Oh,
cannot. Here's the reason why. Because animals have essential amino acids. Plants do not.
oh, okay.
Plus, if you're eating a lot of plant-based in the first place, now plants do have a lot of antioxidants. I'll give them that.
Mm-hmm.
But if plants are defending themselves against you, where they're not going to let you absorb some of those things, what's the point in eating them?
That's fair.
Okay.
Yeah.
And like I said, unless you're going to ferment a lot of your vegetables and fruits,
Mm-hmm.
if you got to have plants, plant-based, start fermenting it. I would say that. Okay. So,
Like sauerkraut and stuff like that.
well, that's fermented cabbage, yes, but you can even ferment things like you can ferment things like cucumbers and which are pickles really, zucchini. You can do that kind of stuff. You can ferment onions. You can ferment carrots. You can ferment just about any sort of vegetable.
Barley and hops.
Yeah, well, I don't know about all that now, Chris,
Oh,
but
okay. All right. All
but
right. Fair
but
enough.
my point is, look, like I said, I'm not here to totally knock plant-based eating. That's not the purpose of this podcast tonight. I'm just giving you both sides of it. I don't believe that any extreme is good necessarily. I do believe that there are some people who can handle more carnivore, and there are some people who can handle more plant-based.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but you got to find out what that happy medium, what that sweet spot is for you.
Right. Right.
So
And that
that's
goes back to what you were talking about earlier, you know, like evaluating just how you feel, but also doing some testing, getting blood
yes,
tests and things like that, looking at markers.
yeah. Some of it's going to be subjective.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it's going to be, more scientific. There's no
Yeah.
doubt about it. More empirical. You have to use your instincts as well, because you just can't say, well, according to my labs. No, you can't do that. You have to also go by how you feel, because your labs might feel great, according to what science says. Yeah, you might be eating right, but if you still feel like shit, then something's not right.
Yeah. Fair.
Right.
That totally makes sense.
So
Yes.
I'm not. Look, I'm into science. I like to read research articles. I've sent some to you and
Yeah.
Paul, but you just can't totally go by what science says. You have to go by how you feel. And like I said, I use that acronym SMEC: sleep, mood, energy, cravings, hunger. If all of those are lining up just right, I say keep doing what you've been doing. If
Mm-hmm.
any one of those are out of sync, something needs to be tweaked going on. Either your exercise, activity, eating, um, maybe it's emotional, maybe you're going through some emotional stuff, bankruptcy, maybe a divorce, death in the family. That can also throw things off as well. So, I got a little bit deep tonight, but I wanted to get that out there. And because, our society, I think we fall for things too much. What's popular, what's trendy. And people, I'm just going to tell you, don't do that. Find a plan that works for you, stick with it. If you want to change a few things, see how I feel, fine. But just don't do it because some athlete's doing it who's making millions of dollars on TV advertising some crap, or some celebrity's doing it, some Hollywood star or some singer. So what? They're not you. Okay? Do what's best for your body, for your emotional health.
So if somebody's wanting help from you, let's say, be it with exercise or nutrition, or they just need somebody to check their smack, how can they get in touch with you?
816-405-7703. My email is rwpsports yahoo.com.
Awesome. Hey, Roberto, thank you. As always, this has been enlightening, and appreciate you sharing the research that you do. You don't seem shy about sharing your opinions on this show. Appreciate that as well. And folks, get in touch with Roberto if you're wanting some help with your health, with nutrition, with exercise, which we didn't talk a whole lot about tonight, but he can help you with a holistic approach to your health. And with that, we will call it a wrap for this edition of the Health Detective Podcast.
Take care, guys. God bless.
Bye.
See you, Paul.
Thanks for listening to the Health Detective Podcast with Roberto Parker. You can contact Roberto at 816-405-7703 or by email at rwpsports@yahoo.com with any comment or question you may have. Join us next time for the Health Detective Podcast with Roberto Parker. The Health Detective Podcast with Roberto Parker has been a KCTK production, produced by Roberto Parker, Chris Whiting, and Paul Lavoda. All rights reserved. For more information and content, email us at kctkradio@gmail.com.